And welcome to another exciting episode of the Mando Method Podcast. I am your co-host, Armand Rosamilia.
And I'm the other co-host, Chuck Buda, not wearing a Garden State Parkway t-shirt.
I got this. You know where I got this shirt?
In New Jersey?
Yeah, the Garden State Parkway.
Did
they? I don't think it was the Bon Jovi one on 95. I don't think they had that officially titled yet. I think it was the Vince Lombardi one. And we walked in. I had to go to the bathroom. We went because they have the Roy Rogers there, and I had to get a couple of double R burgers. And then my wife's like, "Oh, look, they have all these stupid Jersey shirts." And I'm like, "If they have anything in like Mammoth Giant size, then buy me one." So she did.
Yeah, they should give it to you since they charge like $17 one-way trip to work. You know, I still pay for my son's Easy Pass. It's ridiculous.
What's the old George Carlin joke? When you're in New Jersey, just give them a blank check at one end and just fill it out at the other end because it costs you about $1 million back and forth.
Oh, goodness.
But we have a good round table, couple of good guests. But before we do that, Chuck, take care of some business.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we'd like to not thank the New Jersey Parkway, Garden State Parkway, but we would like to thank the Reaper's Brew coffee folks at reapersbrew.com. As you can see, Armand's got the mug, or one of the mugs there. And he's got about 20 of the mugs behind him on the shelf. Everything is horror-themed coffee. Of course, it's a veteran-owned company, and you could get not only the mugs, but the coffee, which is single bag, K-cups, subscription, whatever you want. Everything is microbrewed and fresh roasted. Of course, they've got the two great flavors, Murder Mud, which is the regular, and Electric Chair, which is high caffeine. Or if you want to play weekend chemist like I do, you mix them together, and boy howdy, can you write a lot of words on the weekend if you mix them together. You don't even know what you're going to get. It's like rocket fuel. Anyway, make sure that you use the coupon code MANDO, that's MANDO, at checkout, and you'll receive 10% off of new orders, plus receive a free gift. Thank you, reapersbrew.com.
Nice.
I
keep losing my stupid thing. I should go back to the headphones.
I like it. You know, I mean, it's the Princess Leia look. So
yeah,
to have the. Well, enough of the Star Wars talk. Let's introduce these great people.
Speaking of Princess Leia.
Or Star Wars, because the best ship in Star Wars is the Enterprise. It's got to be, hands down. Right? So I'm S.A. Schneider. That's my pen name, Stephen Schneider. I write middle grade fiction, fantasy, and I basically consider anything fantasy. So that way I could say I can write whatever I want instead of worrying about genres. Because honestly, middle grade is not a genre, it's a demographic, right? So that's my thing. So that's what I do. I write middle grade fiction. And like Star Wars.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I am Zachary Hagen. I write young and new adult fantasy, and have started delving into science fiction with a current project. I have about 3 books that I'm working on simultaneously right now. So, and I am the author of the Eternal Chronicles series.
Well, awesome having you guys here to hang out with us. So my first question is, obviously you guys are writing, like you said, it's not really genres. It's really like age appropriate, I guess you would call. Did you both grow up reading, middle grade, young adult, those kinds of books?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I did. About age 10, I started. I was reading before that a little bit, but they didn't have the plethora of books they have now for that age group. So, 8 to 10, I started off with Lord of the Rings and Stephen King. So I started right off with all the middle grade available. I've read those since the beginning. Back then it was Narnia and the Little House on the Prairie books, and the Twist in Time, L'Engle, the French, forget. There weren't quite as many. So, I jumped right into the adult stuff pretty quickly.
Right. I think that, my experience was pretty similar just because I started reading, really getting into it maybe third, fourth grade. And I read so much that I started, grabbing some of the more mature books like Lord of the Rings. I read The Inheritance Cycle pretty voraciously as they came out from Christopher Paolini. I also read The Time Quintet by Madeleine L'Engle. Oh, that was what you were.
That's what I was trying to remember. Yeah.
You might have been talking about the Wheel of Time.
Oh,
series.
no.
There's so many different series with time in it. Yeah, I read The Time Quintet. I loved A Wrinkle in Time and A Swiftly Tilting Planet, especially. Yeah. I did read the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't think I read any Little House on the Prairie. And then I was pretty much about the time I was in middle grades is when Rick Riordan started pumping his workout with Percy Jackson series and the stuff that came out after that. So I ate all of that up.
It's crazy now how much is available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like too much is available to kids, and for us, like you said, we read Tolkien because we went through our school library or the local library, and they had like it felt like they had 10 or 15 books. You couldn't look anything up. Like I was in heaven when my mom started buying me Hardy Boys books.
Oh, I loved Hardy Boys
because there was about 10 million of them.
Right.
And she's like, "Do you have this one with the they're in the cave?" I'm like, "I don't." There's like 7 covers with they're in a cave. So we started getting Hardy Boys, and I'm like, you know what? I'll read Nancy Drew because there's 10,000 of those too.
Right.
But now today it's crazy. My kids are all in their 20s and growing up. They had a million different great books to read for whatever they were looking for.
Yeah, and I mean, I miss the Goosebumps, but now I can look at the kids and go, Goosebumps. I read Stephen King. Come on, Zach. Question: have you gone back since you're older now and tried to read Narnia or any of those other books, from way long ago? Mm-hmm. Did you try and read them now as an adult?
I started to read through the Chronicles of Narnia recently. I think that what C.S. Lewis said was that he got more out of reading fairy tales as an adult than he did as a kid is definitely true. I see a lot more of the nuance that he built into the world. And it's kind of what I've tried to do with my series because I loved the Chronicles of Narnia so much and I saw that people weren't reading them as much now. And my series is actually sort of not a take on his world, but sort of a spiritual successor to what he was trying to do with Narnia.
Cool. See, I went back and I've read them and I found them much harder to read. I did not think they held up quite as well compared to the new stuff, Riordan and things.
Yeah.
That's just a sign of the times more than anything, I think.
Which is why I wanted to put something else out there that was sort of a similar idea. I mean, I don't have the travel between worlds like he does in mine, but I think that, he was writing shortly after World War II ended, so I think some of his works of fiction just, while I love them, there's a lot of nostalgia there for me. I know that kids aren't going to relate to it even as easily as I did in the early 2000s.
Agreed. And I like that you said it's kind of a spiritual successor. That's kind of what I did too. Mine, I guess, I tried to take closer from Harry Potter, mainly because I wanted to set up an author table at a Wizarding World locally. So I better write a book about magic and, let's base it off of Harry Potter and Star Wars.
Those are very close, so that would work.
Yeah, exactly. Keep the same concepts.
When I've seen the memes where people are comparing Star Wars and Harry Potter, and it's amazing how many plot points and tropes that they share in common.
Magic wands, lightsabers. Can't do the same thing.
Now, when you both, since you're both more into, I guess, what I would consider heavy speculative fiction, being fantasy and sci-fi type, Do you start with a thematic approach to the story, or do you kind of build your world and then the characters and what you want to talk about, and then kind of arrive at theme, or do you just kind of figure everything out at the same time? Like, how do you, I guess, originate your series or your story?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. I think for me, it was sort of all of those things at once, because I had a lot of differing inspiration for the first book in my series, the Eternity's Well. There's some elements of Avatar: The Last Airbender in there, because that had incredible world building, and I feel it was very well done. The Secret Circle made it in there, as well as, of course, the Chronicles of Narnia, and even aspects of Paolini and Tolkien made it in. So some of the world building was happening before the characters really took shape. But I think what really landed me on the solid story was getting to know the characters and what their motivations were, and the conflict that starts it off. And then from there, the rest of the story became clear.
Wow, Zachary definitely has it much more together than me. I wanted to get a story out, and it was 7,500 words. I'm like, good, I've got a story. And then I started putzing around with it, and pretty soon it grew to 20,000 words, and there were some things missing, and suddenly there's a great idea for another story. And when all was said and done, I had an almost 50,000 word book with 5 more books planned in the world, which started as one short story. So
okay.
now I'm planning it, but initially, no, there wasn't as much planning. But it was also very, very early for me. So I've learned a lot from then to now. And I think it's showing in the stories themselves and the planning.
So would you consider yourself more of a plotter or a pantser, or somewhere in between?
Well, I started off as a pantser because I had no idea what I would need to do to outline or plot anything. And I had to write a lot of words from several different books before I realized what the heck was going wrong, so I could actually plot and plan something out. So I definitely am much more of a plotter outliner now, though I don't think I go into as great a detail as like Patterson or anything. I try and keep it simple.
Yeah, I've seen some people go really detailed. They have character Bibles, and I'm like, I spend enough time with the characters. I don't I feel like they're my kids in a sense. So right. I really need to.
You guys have some kind of world building Bible for your stuff? Do you keep track of like the magic system or the money or the classes or any of those types of things?
Well, like for me, like everything I've done with this story, I do now. I pictured, after thinking of this and writing the first story, and the second is pretty much done, and ideas for third and on. Those DK books, they did a lot for Star Wars, the visual dictionary, visual guide to the universe and all that. I'm like, man, I would love to have one of those made of my stuff. So I said, I better start keeping track of everything, because then I also, knowing where the stories are going to go in the other books, I wanted to put some things in the early stories that would come back later in the later stories. So it really tried to mesh it and tie it together. And man, you really can't do that without some sort of Bible outline and everything. So I do now, but hopefully eventually I'll put into a whole book and release it as, an extra for the whole world.
Yeah, I don't personally have a Bible or a binder where I keep all of that stuff organized. Mostly because, at least with that aspect, especially with the magic system, it kind of builds as it goes. Because looking back over the first 2 books that are now out and the third one that is in the editing phase, it started out as a very soft magic system. Not a whole lot of explanation, not a whole lot of understanding of how it works. And now with the third book, the actual rules and essence of how the world and the magic works is starting to come out and be explained. And that kind of follows how the characters get to know their world and get to know their own place in the world and their mission better as it as it goes, because there wasn't really a clear direction for the characters as far as beyond their own personal conflicts until really the end of book 2. And that's where some of the larger explanations have come in. So I've kept less track of that so that the plot can explore and develop as the books grow and change with the characters.
Do you think, Zach, that you might do something similar and release a Bible?
I might if there ends up ever being demand for it. At this point, I'm still, on the part of it where I'm trying to get people to buy it, because of course it's a partial series, and a lot of people who are interested in series actually wait until every single book is out before they buy it.
So you could do like a collected edition and include that as a bonus in the collected edition or something.
I've thought about that. I've thought about doing like even releasing like an edition with notes in the margins or something like that, of like when I came up with this idea or how things changed. Because I started out planning the series with like a 6 or 7 character main cast. It whittled down to 4. And really a core group of 3, because that 4th member left after the first book, and is still part of the series, but is less involved. And new characters come in and sort of shuffled in and out. But I feel like less of a Bible documenting, how I built the magic system and things like that, and more an edition where there are notes in the margins talking about and commentating on specific plot points and things like that and when they emerged.
One of the things I'm doing and really trying to I want to focus on, is to get kids writing and understanding that writing is something they could do now, get practice, and then whatever their career choice, they can still write when they're older and, get started now. So I want to have the Bible, because then, here's the whole guide to the world, and, write stories off of this. And I'm trying to start encouraging homeschool teachers and parents. And, if your kids write, send it to me. And if you approve, I'll put it on the website. Other people can read it and, get a collection of these stories written by the kids set in the world. So the Bible thing is kind of integral to that, because it gives kids, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons book, that you go through and you get all your ideas, looking at those hardbacks.
You're opening the door for fan fiction that actually feels canon.
Yeah, which J.K. Rowling did. So, if she did it, then, I could do worse than to mimic her.
Oh, that's a great idea. I think that, for me, like I talk about writing and strategy on my TikTok. I offer editing services through my publishing house. So, I encourage writing in that way, but I also happen to be an English teacher. So I have sort of a direct way of getting kids to write.
Nice.
Yeah, actually, that's, going back to what you were talking about, Zachary, putting together the book with the notes and the margins and stuff. A lot of times, as Armand and I try to build our newsletters and for our readers, stuff like that is really good to entice people, to sign up for the newsletter, to get on the mailing list. Use that as your freebie to get people to jump into the world and hopefully buy into the series, which is another tough thing, that Armand and I have talked about it how many times. Writing series is difficult because you almost have to plan or envision something going out long term. But like you said, going back to Robert Jordan, my wife is a huge fantasy reader, and she still laments, the fact that he died before he finished Wheel of Time, and I know somebody took it over since then and all that.
Sanderson.
Yeah. But I see that too with the series, in that people are hesitant to jump in until it's near completion or completed, because people don't want to be left hanging. And similarly, when you go and do signings in person, people are less apt to jump in and buy a series of books as opposed to standalones, because they look at it and they're like, oh my God, I got to invest, $10 times 6 books or whatever. And I didn't come here to spend all that money. So it's difficult, but then yet you look at the algorithms on Amazon and everywhere else, and it's really built to succeed via series, because
Right.
whether it's Kindle Unlimited or just people binge reading like the Netflix model, they'll take off. Whereas, if you're doing standalones, it's very easy for somebody to jump from your book into somebody else's and then maybe not come back again. So anyway, just some commentary on that. But so it sounds like I know how Stephen got into writing, because you wanted to be a part of that convention that was coming up, or did it start before that? But also, Zachary, I guess, being an English teacher, did you know at an early age that you wanted to be a writer? Or I guess each of you talk about the genesis of how you guys undertook the process to get published.
Yeah, I think I definitely knew early on that it's something that I wanted to do as part of my professional life. My parents saved like little stapled together pieces of paper with stories in them and pictures drawn. And while I no longer illustrate my own books, this is actually my cover for my second book behind me, and I don't have enough talent to do this.
Wow.
I kept the passion for writing. Eternity's Well was actually the first one that I actually finished. I have several unfinished manuscripts from ideas that just didn't click. This was the first one that clicked, and I was able to really dig into and finish. And now that I've done it once, I'm able to delve into other ideas that I've had.
Yeah, I wish I could say I've always wanted to write, but it's kind of like my actual books. Not really planned. It just kind of happened along the way. I did want to originally write some stories for my daughter, because I thought there, at the time, about 10 years ago, there needed to be a bit more girls that were the smart hero in the book. And that, I mean, in the last 10 years, that's changed quite a bit. There's a lot more. But at the time, I was a Girl Scout leader with my daughter, and the girls were reading the same stuff the boys were, which was, the boys don't read a whole lot. So I wanted to write something that was kind of like a female middle grade MacGyver that was also a superhero with powers. So, that was my first book, which I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day now, but that kind of got me started with where I'm at. So I've always been creative. I'm a musician, D&D, I used to make dungeons. I can't draw worth a darn, but it's always been some creative outlet, making some video games, programming. So the writing kind of fit very well with that. In fact, my business name is Mind Architecture. Started when me and a buddy in college were making levels for Doom, and we wanted to sell them. And it was going to be the business Mind Architecture, building worlds for your mind. So even back then, I started using the name, and it stuck with everything I've done.
Doom is still the greatest game ever.
And you could play it on every device ever. I mean, I think toasters now you can play it on.
Yeah, I still have my PS2 hooked up with Final Doom. That's like one of the games that I'll go back. My kids are always like, "Dad, this is so ancient." I'm like, "This is still the greatest game ever."
Yeah, I have it on Xbox, and I bought it on GOG, and I bought it on Steam, and I bought the digital versions on Xbox. So I have it everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm personally biased more towards like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that was my son's 27. That's what he grew up. He grew up on Kingdom Hearts, was like the game for him. So, but we always got all those different, like Suikoden and Vandal Hearts, and all those were always such great games that the two of us would play. We'll still play. He'll still call me and go, "I just found Suikoden 3. You know, it's like $180 now or something ridiculous like that. Some version of it, you know."
And one of the things I'm doing with kids, I should say, haven't really done a whole lot, is working with them that story in video games is now a thing. And there are companies hiring narrative writers to write just the story, just write the dialogue lines, just write the backgrounds, the side quests, and actual positions, and that it is a career choice. And I'm targeting, again, the middle grade, because I think parents definitely aren't realizing that, you know, if your kid can write a video game story, they have a chance of getting a good job, and it's growing. And, you know, in 2020, the video game industry made more money than the National Football League. So there's the jobs out there, and they have a better chance of getting those jobs. So that's one of the other things I'm working on is story in video game.
Because everybody plays. Everybody's, you know, it doesn't. We all started. All of us old guys like me and Chuck. We started playing, you know, in television and Atari and all those, and it just builds up. And now that we have kids, that they're playing these crazy realistic looking games and everything, and you know, and it's not going to stop. Their kids are going to play on, and then we'll go back. I mean, I'm on a this is funny. I'm on a Minecraft kick for like the last 6 months. I'm playing like every day because I'm just like chopping down trees with my bare hands, and I'm breaking cobblestones, and it's just mindless nothing. Oh, there's a skeleton. Let me go fight the skeleton. And it's great to just take me out of the crap of everyday life sometimes and everything else. And it's just such a, you know, it's one of those things. But I really stopped playing video games when my son started kicking the crap out of me.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, you mentioned the ultra realistic, but the retro game look is huge. Yeah. And some of those have some of the better stories. And I know people aren't always paying attention, but man, if a video game doesn't have a good story, a lot of times they don't care for it. Yeah, the retro games sometimes are like the old arcade stuff. Just put in a quarter, play until you die, repeat. Right. The story is minimal, but the newer stuff, you know, some of the, like Alan Wake is one of my favorites, and the story in that is fantastic.
Right.
Not for kids, but.
Yeah, I think you have two kinds of gamers. You have the ones that are going to go for something like Fortnite or a shooter where you don't have to invest in a story. And then you have everyone else who's playing things like Assassin's Creed and Kingdom Hearts and, you know, the Horizon series. I guess they have 2 out now. And I don't know if anyone here played Horizon Zero Dawn, but that had one of the richest stories that I've seen in the first video game in a series in a long time.
I have not played that. I know of it.
I'm still trying to get through Barnstormer.
You got to avoid the birds. They slow you down.
Yeah, I found that out.
So Zach, actually, the one thing you said, you know, games like Fortnite and that, those actually still have story elements because they do different seasons with quests or a group thing. I mean, there's a little bit of story in there, but some of the NPCs then get lines, and so there is some elements to it.
I haven't played it recently, but I think the last season I was a part of was maybe 1 or 2 after the one where it was Marvel heavy. I don't remember what it was called, but it was in a desert, I think was the largest portion of it. So I've played it, and there's definitely an aspect of narrative in it, but it's definitely not the main focus like it is for single player narrative games where the whole point is to experience a story.
Right, absolutely. And that's the great thing though, is more video games are including story elements. So when I'm talking to parents, talking to kids, not just like anything, you know, you're not guaranteed to get out, but if a kid's in 5th or 6th grade and they start writing a short story or a couple short stories, and they, with some of the tools that are available, they come up with an interesting story that they turn into a video game. By the time they're 18, they've got a resume. And video
Right.
game companies aren't going to say, well, do you have a college degree and did you study your history in that? No, they're going to say, really? You've wrote 15 little short stories and 3 video games while you're going through school? Let's check you out. That's how they're going to get the job. They can start in 6th grade. And by the time they're in 12th, they've got more experience than people that have graduated from college.
Absolutely. I mean, the other option for that is people who get into it later and maybe do have a bachelor's. There's also, MFA programs and things like that. And some of them are directly focused on writing for television or writing for video games, writing for media in general. And I think it's one of those things where the skills transfer. And because, we see things like people leaving Netflix for things and a lot of, I want to say controversy in the field of entertainment, it's splintering. So I feel like within the next 10, 15 years, there's going to be more media companies, some smaller, some larger, where they're all going to need content writers to write for all of these different perspectives and things that people are looking for.
Absolutely. And you're better having in your toolbox that you can write. Mm-hmm. You can write fiction. You can write scripts. You can write comic books. You can write all these other different medias, and you have some experience in all that, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to come and go, I've written a bunch of scripts for video games. They're saying, wait, you also can write comic books. You can also write this. You can also do other things. Those are the people that we're hiring, because those jobs are so, here, sit down and do this code for 12 hours, and then tomorrow, here, you're doing graphics with it. I mean, and that's the fun part. The bad part, like you said, is those people get washed out so quickly. I've read so many biographies and books about the gaming and comic books and everything else, and those people, by 30, it's like you're an athlete. You're washed out, or you bought the company.
Well, that's one of the great things about the kids, that they have so many choices that we haven't had in our lives. And again, if they're in 6th grade and they write a comic book with friends and they do a video game and they use the tools to make, and they write short stories, and by the time they're 18, they've got all this experience. So if they write a novel, it's going to be better than my first novel, when I was 45. So the kids then, if they say, I'm getting burnt out of comic books, they can write another book. They can look at a video game. They can try, that there's multiple things they could do. And that's part of what I think some people have a hard time with is, honestly, for a long time, there hasn't really been job security. You're not getting a job out of school, doing it for 45 years and retiring with the gold watch from one company.
But that was our parents. Our parents did.
Yes. And too many people, I think, still have that mindset. So when I talked to them, I said, look, your kids won't ever have to answer to anybody. They can write a short story. They can work on a video game in the afternoon. They can go teach a workshop with this. They can choose to, they can mix and match. And they're like, well, that's not job security. I'm like, what are you talking about? They are in complete control of everything they're doing and how much work they want and what they want to do. And if it's not working, they can just do another different thing. There's Fiverr, there's Etsy. It's just so many things. People make a living off of eBay itself. So you can't tell me that there's not opportunities with all the stuff we have available. And again, if the kids are in the right mindset with their parents and teachers at middle school, by the time they graduate, they're not going to necessarily need to get $200,000 in debt for college, because they'll already be earning more money than a college graduate. And I'm not saying college is bad and they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying there's options that
if you're creative, if you're us growing up, we all played Dungeons and Dragons. We all made our own comic books with friends. I mean, we did all these things that they're doing today. We all dreamed up video games and different things, but there was nowhere. We thought there was nowhere for us to go. At 52 years old, I did all this stuff. I did in the 90s. I did music zines. I did all these creative, fun things, never realizing that you can do all these things today and actually make have a career. I didn't realize when I was 12 years old and I picked up a Dean Koontz book that, hey, by the time I'm 52, I'm going to make a living as a writer. I'm going to be able to sell books and pay my bills off of this. It was just a fun thing. Let's start writing stories. Now, someone like you is showing them giving them the tools to say, you can do this. If you are creative, if you do love this, you can do this for a living. You don't have to you don't have to work in fast food, or you don't have to work 90 hours in retail. You don't have to do jobs that you don't want to do because you feel like you have to pay the bills.
Right. And that's, when I talk to parents, teachers, and that's one of my points. And again, they'll come back with, well, some kids need, okay, great. But I'm just saying this is another option that's available, like a trade school. Not everybody goes to college. Some people go to trade schools. They become a welder and they make good money. Or my friend of mine, he just switched careers and became a truck driver. He makes better money than he did before. So yeah, it's just another option. I just like it because it's very flexible and puts the person in control of their life and career.
Well, it's absolutely true. And it's why I think that it's one of the reasons I'm very grateful to have been born here rather than my family. A good portion of my family is from Cuba. My wife was actually born there. And people in that country don't have the kinds of opportunities that we have in the Western world to create niches and places where we can do something creative. We can write books. We can start companies that sell natural soap. We can do so many different things. And if there's someone interested in what you're offering, there's a career there.
And I love it too, because even in countries like Cuba, where they push it back, frown upon it, with the internet, there's still things getting out, and it's changing. We are slowly, very slowly, but surely getting a little bit closer to Gene Roddenberry's world, where you don't go to another galaxy, another planet, and say, well, I'm from Ohio. You say, I'm from Earth. So everybody's from Earth. That's kind of, the utopian outlook. And with the internet, we're getting that a lot more than I think we have. I'm not saying everything's perfect in that, but I like the fact that we can get musicians and authors and stuff from Cuba that we might not have had and seen before because of the online stores, the online opportunities.
We don't, as authors, we don't have to fly to Cuba to sell our books.
Right.
Our books are a click away for somebody in another country, in another state, wherever it is. That's also the fun of being authors today, as opposed to being authors pre-2008.
Yes. And reverse that. I've found books written by people from other countries where it's totally different. That I joked with the one author. He was writing fantasy, but based on African mythology. And I was like, wow. So it's not a white dude from England writing the same mythology over and over. Right. It's something different. And he kind of laughed. He said, yeah. And I'm like, I love that. I said that the variety, again, it's been a big push lately and an outcry for diversity, variety, and all that. And we are getting it. People just have to look a little bit because it is there. And the more we support it, the more it will happen.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that one great thing is that for those of us writing now is that we see these more diverse stories coming really into their own. And so, like, even though I consider my series a spiritual successor to the Chronicles of Narnia, I don't explicitly say it, but not all of the characters are white, and there's a lot more emphasis on the equality and the power of femininity among the female characters in my books, which I think is important for that to be seen. Like you were saying with a book that you wrote for your daughter, I want everyone to feel like they see themselves in my books, and because I've seen this diversity sort of explode, it's freed me up to think about other stories. Like I'm writing a retelling of Aladdin, but from the perspective of the princess.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the flying carpet.
Oh, that would be interesting too, but focusing. So it's a first-person story. So I'm writing from the perspective of I've named her Aisha, since Jasmine would be copyrighted by Disney. So Aisha is the main focus, and she is actually the one that was a street rat, so to speak, and made the wishes with the genie, and somehow ended up as the princess usurping Aladdin.
Nice. And oh dang, I was enthralled with what you're saying. You said something, and now I forgot what I was going to add to it. I apologize. It'll come back later.
Now, do you guys have plans to write across other genres at all, or do you kind of like where you're at and plan to stick there? Or, Armand and I have bounced around between horror and crime thrillers and westerns and all kinds of stuff and zombies, and just wondering if you guys think about that, like branching out and trying different things, or kind of just sticking with where you're at now and taking it further.
I've not liked categorizing and saying, oh, if you write thrillers, you got to keep writing thrillers. I read so much variety of things. Sitting on my bedside stand right now, I've got Agatha Christie, Isaac Asimov, Dean Koontz, and Lee Child. So it's a pretty big mix of stuff. I didn't have a Stephen King because I've read almost all of them. And I don't do that with my stuff. That's why, jokingly, I said, well, I write middle grade. Because middle grade is not a genre. You just say you might write middle grade, you write anything. So I've got my fantasy series, which is magic. It's basically a coming of age with wizards and stuff. But then I've got another series that I've started getting a little bit out, and it's more of an alternative British simple spy thriller that's a little steampunk. And then the other one I'm excited about that I've gotten started on is more urban paranormal. But I just put them all, it's fantasy. It's steampunk fantasy with a spy thriller. It's fantasy, urban paranormal, because in many ways, that is all fantasy. And it gets people looking at it without saying, oh, well, that's something different. And if they don't like it, I like the tag system on Netflix much better than the categories or the genres that we use for books or whatever. Give me 5 tags that describe this book. And if I like other gritty, give me a list of gritty ones. Give me a list of romance, but the tags fit, and I can find other books or movies in that same tag. I like that much better than genre or the categories that Amazon uses.
Yeah, I would say that I'm comfortable with writing within genres, and so far everything I've written has been fantasy. I've written a couple chapters for a story that I have down the pipeline once I'm done with Aisha's Secret and the Eternal Chronicles. That's more sci-fi. I feel like aside from that one sci-fi idea, I feel like I'm more interested in pulling pieces of other genres into fantasy just because I'm comfortable in that genre. Like one of the books I have down the pipeline, sort of a collection of retellings that are in line with Aisha's Secret, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that involves murder mystery being thrown in there as well. So I like the umbrella of fantasy and integrating other things within it.
That makes sense. All right, guys, this is awesome chatting with you guys. But before we do anything, Steven, I'm seeing Alpha Flight behind you there.
Yes.
That is my favorite superhero comic book of all time.
I love it. That's my favorite. I love those guys.
I was like, what is that, and why don't I have that? I have a bunch of Alpha Flight stuff hanging on the wall, and I have obviously the complete run.
Yeah.
From I collected when I was a kid. That is absolutely my favorite superhero comic book album.
Yeah, they really did not do them justice after that first run. Volume 2 and 3 were not good, and they killed them off, and then they brought them back with Miss Marvel. So that made a lot of sense. Let's take Sasquatch, who's really big and stuff like the Hulk, and we're going to put him in a spaceship. Yeah. That made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I was not happy after that first run, but I always try to get anything I can, any of the figures, any of the different things, and I have a bunch of different I got the first cover. I got a poster of that up in my office and stuff like that. So I was I noticed the letters. I'm like, wait a minute, that.
A secret. My son works at a comic book store.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah, I raised him right.
You did. And also, before we go, all your Star Wars stuff back there, Def Leppard. That when Def Leppard was in Star Wars, that was my favorite part of Star Wars.
Yes.
Def
Yeah.
Leppard thing
When they were using those sonic screwdrivers to attack the Death Star.
But it was awesome having you guys on. This is a lot of fun. I definitely,
thank you guys. It was good. Nice to meet you, Zach.
Learned a lot. Yeah,
it
was nice you guys talking back and forth too, which we always like as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you guys.
Yeah, very conversational and also easily discussed. Reaper's Brew coffee. See how nice segue, right?
Excellent segue.
Yeah, even better than the one that I ride down my driveway and fall off of in front of the neighborhood kids all the time. But anyway, dad humor aside, Reaper's Brew coffee. Check them out at reapersbrew.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code MANDO, MANDO at checkout, and you'll get 10% off new orders, plus receive a free gift. Everything is microbrewed and fresh roasted, and it's a horror-themed coffee with a veteran owner. So great to support them, and we appreciate them supporting the show and allowing us to talk about fun stuff like writing with fine people like Zachary and Steven. So thank you very much, reapersbrew.com.
Well, now I gotta go get some.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it is delicious. I drink it every morning of my life.
I bathe in it, but that's probably too much for YouTube to take. So.
That's why you have that weird skin color.
Yeah, I could take it to school visits. Pass it out as prizes to all the middle graders. The teachers would love that.
Yeah. Especially the high octane stuff.
Yeah.
Keep them up for days.
Keep them all ramped up. Now we're gonna write. Let's go.
Yeah, that's how you do it. All right, guys, it was great talking to you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.